The show focused on delivering beneficial information on everything to do with products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
A parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hot.
Welcome back to Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. There's Joni Mitchell paving that parking lot, paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. And a big feedback here from our guest, Adrienne Murray, who happens to be from the same province as Joni Mitchell originally, way back when, from Saskatchewan. And Tony Gioventu, the executive director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, recommending that tune to be included in today's show about, well, parking. And we should also talk a little bit about storage, because that is, as I think, considered to be a sort of an add-on part of a strata ownership package, a storage locker of some description. Most strata or condos come with some kind of parking and storage, do they not?
Generally, yes. However, what we are seeing with new developments, especially in density areas where there are not necessarily one parking spot for each strata lot, the parking ratio might actually be lower. Not everyone wants a parking space anymore, right? And so we're seeing a lot of variations. We're seeing lower density on parking. We're not always seeing, you have 105 units, you have 105 storage lockers. That's not always the case.
Okay.
Right? And so some of the larger units may have storage internally and don't need an external storage locker. There could be a variety of reasons why there are not a total number of storage lockers, but storage lockers are classed very much the same way as parking stalls. They are common property. They're administered by the corporation. They could be limited common property. There could be some lease assignments associated with them. They could be part of the strata lot. So they're treated very much the same way as parking stalls are treated, and they're included in the same kind of sales information that you'll see in transactions.
Okay, so Adrienne Murray, strata lawyer. I'm the prospective buyer. I'm walking through a resale unit that's owned by someone else currently, but it's right up my alley, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. And so the person walking me through says, look at this view and these countertops, and holy smokes, look at those appliances. And of course it comes with a parking spot and a storage locker. Well, holy cow, sign me up. And I don't think any more about it, because of course it's an expensive downtown condo. Of course it should come with a parking spot and a storage locker. There's a lot of assuming going on.
That's a huge assumption, and there's absolutely no guarantee that it's going to come with either. And
so what do I, as the buyer, have to do right there on the spot? Do I have to turn to that agent who's filling my ears with anything he or she thinks I should hear and say, okay, show me?
Yes. What is the designation? How do you guarantee that I have the use of a parking space and a storage locker? And that's the beginning of the question. And then the answer will be, because it's limited common property, therefore it's shown on the strata plan, it's a guarantee.
Okay.
That's one answer. The other answer is it's common property and there's a developer's lease, and that lease will be assigned to you. Well, then you want to see the lease and you want to see the assignment.
Right.
It could be it's part of a strata lot. Let me show you on the strata plan where it's shown as being part of your strata lot. That will satisfy you as well.
Okay.
But unless those questions are asked and then the answer is discovered, it's just a huge assumption that may well be very wrong. And there are lawsuits out there around parking and storage because of exactly that. The seller was promised something, it wasn't delivered, the seller then sues the buyer.
You know, Tony,
sorry, the buyer then sues the seller. Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, I didn't mean to interrupt, Adrienne, but I'm just thinking, in Metro Vancouver and in Victoria and in a lot of other places in our province, we're talking about a significant investment. I mean, yes, there are more attractively priced condos than in the west end of Vancouver, but serious dollars involved no matter what property you end up acquiring. So one would automatically expect any individual about to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on anything to do extensive homework. But that's just not the case. Not often enough, is it?
I think it's an interesting ad on television that we see these days that talks about people spending more time asking questions about their insurance than they are actually asking questions about the condo or the house that they just bought. Right? You know, the information that you need is so critical. And I think strata corporations and strata councils really struggle with this also because they don't have enough information. And while the disclosure statement itself that was filed by the developer originally, and that the purpose of that statement is basically telling buyers what they're giving them. That's the basic essentials of that statement. While that statement itself doesn't necessarily carry into the life of the strata corporation, what does carry into the life of the corporation are some of the documents contained in this disclosure statement. And so as a strata council, I think it's incumbent on you to get copies of all these original disclosures and any amendments, because buried within these documents, you're going to see things like air parcel agreements, you're going to see things like parking leases and storage locker leases. You'll see things like the rental disclosure statement. All these little documents that are contained within this original disclosure statement will tell the strata corporation a lot of information about their administration. Leases and contracts with relationships with other strata corporations, with service providers and vendors, contracts for things like your Interphone system. So having all this information as the strata corporation is a vital piece of information to have. They can get the disclosure statement by contacting the superintendent of real estate.
Okay.
The superintendent of real estate is where these are filed and where they're housed. The strata corporation can contact the superintendent of real estate through the Financial Institutions Commission, and they can order a copy of it. There's a fee, but they can order a copy of it.
Now, if the strata corporation can go through the proper channels, Adrienne, and get these disclosure documents, can an individual buyer, or does an individual buyer, have the same right of access to the same information?
Absolutely. Contacting the superintendent of real estate, telling them the name of the property, the address, the strata plan, any information that you know about the property will usually get you the disclosure statement. So at least, I don't recommend it as a general rule for buyers generally, because the disclosure statement is primarily the promises of the developer to the first purchaser. But as Tony's indicated, it does contain significant documents that carry forward into the life of the development.
Okay.
So if I was curious about whether there was a developer's lease of parking and a subsequent sublease arrangement, that's exactly the document that I would go to. I would look at the disclosure statement, because if that was the intention of the developer, it should be in that disclosure statement.
So is that one of the common areas where we do drop the ball as consumers, and I guess in some cases as sellers as well, anxious to complete the deal, move the property, get the dough in the bank, etc., making assumptions or leaving areas that could be more clearly defined almost deliberately vague?
Well, I don't know if it's deliberately vague. I think it's just, I think it's the comfort,
I suppose I'm
right?
implying some malicious intent there.
No, I don't think. I think that
I wasn't necessarily going there.
Yeah,
but
it's extremely rare when that happens. I think most people just assume the information that they got was the correct information.
Okay.
Right? It's been told to them by somebody who is reasonably reliable, and they probably think it's the right information. But you know, we're talking about high rises and parking storage lockers.
Yeah, you bet.
But flip side, for all the bare lands, you know, we have bare lands in White Rock, Tsawwassen Delta, Surrey, all across the island, out in the Fraser Valley. That extra parking space for in the parking lot out back for the RV storage or the boat storage could be just as valuable to them.
Sure.
And oftentimes they are developed with that in mind. The developer creates a community, a Bearland community. In the complex somewhere, there might be 20 parking spaces for RV and boat storage or for visitor parking.
And
right?
that's why people seek these particular developments out, because A, usually they're a little off the beaten path outside of the city core,
Yes.
and there is a place to park the boat in the off-season.
Well, and to park your RV, so you're not having to go to a storage facility to retrieve your RV before you go on vacation. So, you know, that type of information, I think, is just as critical for the Strata Corporation. So the other thing that people need to look at, buyers need to look at, whether you're looking, and even owners, whether you're looking at an apartment building, a high-rise, a commercial development, a bare land, a townhouse complex, you need to look at the bylaws of the Strata Corporation, too, about parking. Because there are often many restrictions around the parking that even though it's limited common property or it's part of the Strata or common property, bylaws still apply to parking. Right? It's not just because you may think you own it, or even if you do, as it's part of the Strata lot, the Strata Corporation still have bylaws that control the use and enjoyment of that parking. So there are a lot of layers around limitations on use, as well as identifying who actually has the allocation of using these things.
He is Tony Gioventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association. I'm Sterling Fox, and our special guest is Adrienne Murray, Strata lawyer, and we're back with lots more right after this.
Delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call, and there's more still ahead on AM 650.